This is True Buzz, that Mary J. Now we ain't new to this. For my stoners and for my cannabis enthusiasts, never heard a show as good as this. Number one, it's the best. Bringing in many special guests in the industry of cannabis. Business owners to growers, even artists you know of. So sit back and just roll up. Perfect show for my smokers. True Buzz, hey.
Have you heard about this documentary? I think it's called Crime of the Century. It's on HBO right now, and it's phenomenal.
I wanted to watch it.
Dude, it will blow your mind. Okay, so it's basically the story of the Sackler family that owns Purdue Pharma that created Oxycontin. And it's not only like how they created Oxycontin, but it's also how they worked with... They basically bribed someone at the FDA to make it like officially FDA safe, quote unquote, because before this, a lot of doctors, and still today, a lot of doctors are very hesitant to prescribe opiates, understandably, because these are like heroin pills. It's really only meant to be given to someone who's like terminally ill with cancer or something, and it's like, look, you're going to have a terrible end of your life. Let's at least make it pain-free as possible, which is a very worthy thought. The problem is there's so much goddamn money involved in this medication that they were just, they got FDA approval. And then they had all these sales reps that were just pushing it on these doctors that are like, look, the FDA said it was safe. Meanwhile, it's like admitted that they were bribing this guy at the FDA. And then there's like this one example where this gentleman was saying how his wife, I don't remember what happened to her, but she got prescribed Oxycontin by her physician. And then she was like getting horribly addicted to it. So her husband and her children got her off it, got her into a treatment program. She like kicked the habit, and then her physician intervened and was like, I'm her doctor. You can't tell her what she should and shouldn't take. Got her back on the Oxy, and then she OD'd shortly afterwards. And it's like, dude, that story is told over and over and over and over again. And it's like, we've allowed, I think they said something like 500,000 people roughly have died. It might be more than that, but I think it was, I'm going to watch the documentary. I might be getting this wrong, but it's around 500,000 people have OD'd off Oxycontin in X amount of time, right? And it's like, that's still legal. But in half of the country, you would be in prison right now for that, for smoking that. It's just so preposterous.
There's just such a big fucking disconnect, and that's where it's like, to me, it's awesome to see legalization, and I truly want it, but that's part of the dark side to it too, is that finally these motherfuckers who've been making bank off people's fucking addictions because they've fed them all this shit now want to get money on the weed game, and they will, because they have the fucking capital to throw down. And like, that's where I'm on the fence, like where I'm like, it comes back to me, like, support the local kind of mom and pop grows who are still, enough like legal or whatever. But it's like, that's the line we're at right now, because these companies are seeing it and they're getting in it.
Right.
And it's like,
and they have the muscle to push out the small.
They have the muscle, and they're going to spend the marketing towards, like, in my head, they're going to spend it towards, your first time users, the people who want to first use it. Right. And then they're going to use their shit, and then they're going to like find ways to fucking, and this is the first time I'm even thinking this, saying this, you got me going. They're going to find ways to kind of sink the claws in off the bat. If it's your first time using through, so-and-so who's a pharmaceutical back end, right? They're going to find ways, and maybe, I don't know. I'm fucking on a rant here, but.
No, you're right, dude. Well, and I don't know the inner workings of it, but I have heard a lot of people talk about problems with the industry to that, where the way the laws are now and how the infrastructure of the industry is set up, it gives a very unfair advantage to the people with the most amount of capital to kind of come in and buy. Again, I don't know the nuances, but I'm sure that makes sense. It's unfortunate. I still think that it's better to have that and have it legal
100%
than, because otherwise, it's funny to me. I do wonder what state will be the last one to finally legalize, because I think now it's fully legal, I think, in 11 states, I think.
I think it might even be a little more now. I've been falling out of the news a little bit. I used to keep track of this every week. I want to say...
I think it's recreational in 11 states, and then it's like some level of medical in like another... I don't know. I know that...
Look it up, Phil. There's nobody here.
Oh, I was like...
I can look it up, just fucking...
I was like, do you have someone in another room? But I do know, I read recently that 50% of the U.S. population lives in a place where it's legal. So the places where it's like the places that are the most hardcore against it, most of them are like pretty empty anyway, like South Dakota, Montana.
Yeah, I think it won't even be just one. I think it'll probably be like a group of like 5, and it's going to be federal.
I don't understand why, if any candidate ran on, I'm gonna like in 2024, if either president, whoever runs, I don't think Biden will be back. I hope Trump's not. I hope it's two new people. But whatever, they just run on like. By the way, all like in my presidency, it will be fully federally legal. They'd win in a landslide, dude.
And that makes perfect sense. Well, that's kind of like the vibe. Some of them were like Biden was almost giving off on a little. Honestly, and that was like I've fallen. I don't even hear as much since Trump's been going. You hear so much in the headlines when Trump was in. Like,
yeah,
I don't really keep up with it. But
well, Trump. Well, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. No, you're good. Like,
I'm actually very into politics.
And I'm not. Then that's why I'm like, I don't know.
Not in the sense like I think they're all full of shit. I think they're all very corrupt. I don't align myself with Democrats or Republicans. But I find it interesting, like the inner workings of it, and especially this past year with like all the ridiculous rules of like, this is open, this is closed, this is, you can do this, you can't do that. And it made me very interested in getting involved with the libertarian movement, which is sort of like, I'm not a spokesperson for, I'm not, but my understanding is it's basically minimal government regulation and intervention as much as possible, maximum just like free market. What was my... Oh, but anyway, but when I think the thing with the Trump stuff is like most people don't know or care about the nuances of like how the Federal Reserve works, how like what our foreign policy is and things like we have these like vague understandings of and I don't either. I'm trying to understand them. But Trump was such like a buffoonish, ridiculous character. It was just so easy to make headlines out of everything he said.
Yeah, and shit, it is funny to think about now. Like even thinking about that, like thinking of some media companies, like, nah, fuck, what? Like Biden's not even fucking fun.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, what are we gonna do now?
All the mainstream news outlets, their ratings have plummeted.
They don't know what to do. They're like, what was all this fucking?
That's it. They lost their thing. I mean,
well, and that's what ties it to me too. With like we're saying with like the mainstream pharmaceutical shit is like. These days too, people are smart enough to know, in my opinion, like with the media or like, especially in the cannabis space, because they know it's like, oh, and that's where I have hope, because when I see the cannabis space and people that respect this culture and the community, they're not going to go buy some shit where it's, backed by a pharmaceutical company. However, that being said, the same people will not do the research to know.
Yeah, and the thing is,
and there's so many convoluted ways maybe to have it out there.
When you start looking into who's paying to keep it illegal, like I saw that like Corrections Corp America, which is like this organization that represents most of the private prisons in the U.S., they've donated like millions and millions of dollars to certain congressional campaigns to support congresspeople who are very pro keeping marijuana illegal. So it's like, okay, so the body of like the organization that represents keeping as many people in prison as possible is fighting to keep cannabis illegal. What does that tell you? I mean, think about how fucked that is.
It's insane.
An organization that profits by keeping humans locked in cages wants to keep humans locked in a cage for a fucking plant.
Fucking numbers game.
It's just so gross when you think about it.
It is. And gross is a good word for it, honestly.
Well, it is. I mean, I did... so a lot of this is, like I said, from episode 5 of Highly Unlikely, if you guys want to check it out, the War on Drugs one.
Check it out.
A big part of it, too, was Nixon, when he was president. So he was the first one to push the modern war on drugs, what we know of it today. And a big part of it was like, well, we've got all these black people voting and young hippies and all these, like, liberal, very, like, people that were, like, not of the thinking that he, as the president, wanted to have. So it's like, well, what's a way we can take away people's political power and right to vote? Well, if we start locking people up in mass for doing drugs, pretty easy way to control the population of folks that we don't like. Yeah. And on average now, the U.S. government spends around $51 billion a year fighting the war on drugs. And since it was launched in 1971 officially, drug use in the U.S. has declined by 0. It's only gone up.
This is True Buzz, that Mary J. Now we ain't new to this. For my stoners and for my cannabis enthusiasts, never heard a show as good as this. Number one, it's the best, bringing in many special guests in the industry of cannabis. Business owners to growers, even artists you know of. So sit back and just roll up. Perfect show for my smokers. True Buzz, ayy.